Welcome to Sparks of History, where Jewish history and world history meet. We are very pleased to have with us today Rabbi Mordechai Torczyner. Rabbi Torczyner received his BA from Yeshiva University and subsequently Rabbinic ordination from Yeshiva University's Rabbi Isaac Elchanan Theological Seminary. Rabbi Torczyner served as Rabbi of the Young Israel of Pawtucket, Rhode Island for 4 years, and then Congregation Sons of Israel in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Additionally, Rabbi Torczyner has served 2 terms on the Executive Committee of the Rabbinical Council of America, the RCA. And since its founding in August of 2009, Rabbi Torczyner has served as Rosh Beit Midrash Zichron in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. One can find thousands and thousands of Rabbi Torczyner's shiurim, lessons, and articles that are featured on yutorah.org. And today we were discussing a fascinating topic of the Geonic period, the Geonim, who were they? Writings of the Geonim, what were they? Again, Rabbi Torczyner, thank you so much for being with us today. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm flattered. I want to start out by just noting that I'm not a professional historian. I've had the benefit of learning from historians as well as reading, and that's what's brought me to the point of speaking about the Geonim.
Thank you. Just as an overview, what period are we talking about when we speak of the Geonic period? Where do they live? And what academies, institutions did they run?
Okay, so that's actually, that opening question, the period of time that covers the Geonic period, is probably the hardest question you're going to ask me overall, because it's really unclear. We know that the Talmud Bavli, Babylonian Talmud, is canonized by the end of the 5th century. Ravina and Rav Ashi are credited with the closing of the Talmud. We're also taught that after that is a period called the period of the Savoraim. And according to a letter written by Rav Shira Gaon, which we're going to talk about, I think, later on, the Savoraim have the job of resolving outstanding issues in the Gemara, and they actually insert certain passages into the Gemara. And it's very unclear, number one, how long that period runs, and number two, whether it overlaps with the period that we call the period of the Geonim. So trying to identify the beginning of the period of the Geonim becomes a little bit controversial. Rav Shira Gaon puts it as roughly the year 589 or 590 of the Common Era. I should probably define the term Gaon as part of that, and that'll make it clear as to why there's some hesitation about the dating. The term Gaon itself comes from the term Ga'ava, or power, authority, greatness, and it was the term associated with the head of the yeshiva. And the part of the debate about when to start the period of the Geonim is, when did they start actually using that title for the head of the yeshiva? Is that something that's going on during the time of the Savoraim? We had yeshivos going back to the times of the Gemara. At what point did they start calling the head of the yeshiva a Gaon? But like I said, Rav Shira Gaon thinks that it's the year 589, 590 or so. And that seems to coincide with the end of a period when the yeshivos had actually been closed by the Persian or Sasanian government. There's a period of persecution in which they're not able to run the yeshivos, and then they restart, and that is the official, for better or for worse, beginning of the period of the Geonim. That's our starting point. When does it end? Just as controversial. The yeshivos of the Geonim are somewhat in decline already in the 10th century, and I want to talk about that a little bit later. Certain Geonim strengthened them and kept them going. And the last of the great Geonim is Rav Hai Gaon. And Rav Hai Gaon passes away in the year 1038. So Rabbi Avram ibn Daud in the work Sefer HaKabbalah says that's pretty much the end of the Geonic period. It goes on for a few years after his death, but that's the end. And that tends to be the popular date for the end of the period of the Geonim. However, letters that have been found in the Cairo Geniza indicate that it continued for quite a while after that. There was actually a Talmid Chacham by the name of Shmuel ben Ali who claimed the title of Gaon, who gets into controversies with the Rambam in the 12th century. So there are people using the title of Gaon afterwards. They don't have the same influence as the Gaonim we think of earlier. They're much more local in their authority. Usually I would feel comfortable saying started in the year 589, ended in the year 1038, acknowledging there's fuzziness in the beginning and there's fuzziness at the end. In terms of where they lived and the academies that they ran, so again, yeshivos are an old phenomenon long before there are Geonim. The heads of the yeshivos might have been called Reish Mesivta, Reish Kala, different names for different functions in different times. But the Geonim are specifically associated with yeshivos, which were primarily in Bavel. We're talking about yeshiva in Sura. There's a yeshiva in Matamachsia, which may be, according to some historians, the same as the yeshiva in Sura. There's a yeshiva in Pumbedisa, also known as Fallujah. There's a yeshiva in Neherda, which again, some historians associate with the one in Pumbedisa. Ultimately, that moves to Baghdad. It is worth noting, though, that there were yeshivos outside of these areas. For example, in Kairwan, in what is today Tunisia, there was a yeshiva, and there was one in at least one in Eretz Yisrael, in Israel. So the Geonim would have been the heads of these different yeshivos.